All right, friends, it's time to give you loyal listeners a discount on protein powder. You may or may not know, but I launched my very first protein powder 2 years ago. It's a grass-fed beef isolate with only 3 ingredients: grass-fed beef, either organic cacao or organic vanilla, and organic monk fruit. Now, if you don't want any of the added flavor and sweeteners, you can also just get unflavored. And no matter what flavor you choose, you're getting over 23 grams of protein per scoop, which is going to keep you full and satisfied between meals. I love starting my day with a Fab4 smoothie and breaking my fast with that much protein. It makes a serious difference in my cravings and blood sugar balance the rest of the day, and I've seen it with my clients as well. Now, I never thought I'd own a product company, but when I got pregnant with Sebastian, I realized the majority of protein powders were chemically extracted or enzymatically extracted, and I wanted to use heat and water only. I wanted minimal ingredients because we don't need those emulsifiers, fillers, or added vitamins, minerals, and probiotics. All of those additions increase the chances that it's not going to work for your body, whether it be bloating, digestion issues. I just wanted pure, clean protein to keep you full and satisfied so you could build the most delicious Fab4 smoothie. And I have to say, I'm pretty proud of the flavor. If you take a look at our reviews on Amazon, you'll see 5-star reviews for flavor. And that is key, because if you don't love your Fab4 smoothie and you don't love drinking your protein powder, you're not going to do it. It won't become a habit, and it's consistency that outpaces everything. So if you're here and you're listening and you want to give our protein powder a try, use the code PODCAST5 for $5 off your order. And let me know if you love it. My favorite ways to apply this protein powder is in my Fab4 smoothie, making freezer fudge, making chocolate milk, making hot chocolate, and throwing the unflavored into all my kids' baked goods. So let me know how you use it. Let me know if you love it, and share this podcast deal with your friends.
Mallory Ervin is a Kentucky-grown, Nashville-living dreamer. From her time in the Miss America pageant to being a 3-time contestant on The Amazing Race, Mallory turned her passion for sharing her love of fashion, beauty, and life into a platform for impact. Today, she runs a global lifestyle brand she founded in 2016, hosts the Living Fully podcast, where she encourages and inspires her dedicated following to seek joy, live fully, and appears across platforms ranging from Instagram to YouTube, sharing her life and her message of living fully. Her new book, Living Fully, released February 2022, encourages readers to shift their perspective and embrace the life they want.
All right, Mallory, welcome to the show. You are pregnant with number 3.
Number 3.
You're doing it, Mama.
I am. And I just told you off air that I am a big Be Well by Kelly protein consumer. I love the protein.
Well, anything to keep you from gestational diabetes, this time around, is the goal.
I know it. And I wish I was a natural that just liked eating healthy like you, but it was really something that I had to learn. And I made a big lifestyle shift. And little things like, I always thought, protein powder is good. Any kind of stuff that you put in your smoothie, of course it's good and healthy. And I learned this summer when I did the whole big life overhaul, it's not always like that. You've got to get the right stuff. So that's when I really learned about you. And so I'm a big fan.
Well, thank you. And thank you for being here. I think that when we meet new people and learn about, others' journey, it's equally as inspiring. So you started as an American pageant. You were Miss America pageant, 3-time contestant, and on The Amazing Race. And you've had this amazing life becoming a mom, and now soon to be a mom of 3. So can we talk about your background in the pageant world and how that influenced your life at a young age?
Yes, absolutely. So I grew up in Kentucky. I live in Nashville now, but I was the oldest of 23 first cousins that all grew up on a farm together out in the middle of nowhere. So being the oldest, I was always an achiever, always, I started singing at a young age, joining my class, all the ways you can succeed as a young person, And in my journey, and what I write about in the book is I did in 2010, I was a runner-up in Miss America. Right off the stage of Miss America, I started reality TV. So I did a show called The Amazing Race with my dad, and we did 2 seasons of that in 2010. So just all of this, one thing after another, and all this really fun stuff. And everything was going pretty well until, I think, as people that like to achieve, it can be a great, healthy motivator, or it can be crippling. Like when you feel like you have to do more and more, and people are watching, and you can't keep doing more and more. So the journey that I went on in the book is I had this spiral. I went through this really dark period in my life that I haven't really talked about. I'm a lifestyle influencer now. I have been for like 8 years. And people see the other side of life. Just like they watch you, they see you happy, healthy, doing all of the things. And I just felt like I was leaving this part of the story out. So that's one reason why I wrote the book. And so I'm still like lifestyle entrepreneur and do all of these things, but I had to share this part of the story. And that's why I wrote the book. But yeah, so mom of 2, soon to be 3. I also have a podcast, merchandise line, YouTube channel, all the social media stuff, everything, just all the things that we all have these days. So now a book.
So can we talk about that dark period and what you were going through and what people weren't seeing on the highlight reel?
Yeah. So like I said, Miss America was in 2010 and I was about 24. It took me 3 years to win Miss Kentucky. And I finally won it on my last year. And, it was such a dream and a goal of mine. I'm from this tiny town where people didn't do things like this. So it was such an amazing thing. But as we know, so many times in life, like the most amazing things can become a little bit crippling to us if we view them the wrong way, or as we think they're our identity all of a sudden, and we're holding them up for the world to see, and you forget who you are behind it. So I started taking a prescription medication that was prescribed to me from a doctor. I didn't necessarily have the condition that it would be for, but it helped my energy stay up. And I thought, since the doctor's given this to me, I'm doing a lot in my life, it's fine. And as I took that for a couple of years and kind of started this period of, it was the beginning of the spiral where I felt like I couldn't achieve enough. And I felt like people were disappointed and all this stuff. Eventually I was taking more and more of that medication and I couldn't sleep. So then they put me on sleeping medication. And 3 years later, that resulted in like physical and emotional collapse, as do a lot of these stories. And, I think medications, when prescribed for reasons, are great. But I did not have these conditions that I was prescribed medication for. And I was taking way more than I needed to. And I ended up in a treatment program. And if you had told me, during the years that I was just this shining light on the Miss America stage, that a few years later I would end up in a program like this, I would have seen no path to that. But so many things that we use to numb out things in our lives can become something that just first steals our health and our soul and our spirit, and then just threatens our life like it did with me. And I was there for about 5.5 months. And nobody knew that side of my story. It's been a really long time. It's 2022. That was a long time ago. And I just kept getting messages, like I'm sure you do too. A lot of people that follow along that would say, I wish I could wake up and face the day like you, or I wish, I wish my life could look a little bit more like this. I wish I could have that relationship with my kids or my husband. And I would say, I choose the way that I live now. I live a different way because of this really dark time that I had, that I pulled myself out of. And I learned a lot through that time. And it was like, they didn't even believe it. They were like, what? And after years of getting that same message in different contexts, I just was like, I've got to tell the whole story, because I never want anybody watching all of the great things on the other side of all this, thinking it was easy to get here, or like you're just born with a life like this, or you're not. Because I do believe that choices that you make in your life and just the way that you live every day, that's what determines the way that your life is. It's truly a choice. And it was one that I made that I wasn't really sharing the details of. So yeah, that's a little bit more about that.
So if you don't mind, I'm not sure exactly what you divulge in the book, and if you're willing to talk about it now, but what was the medication that you were prescribed that what you weren't diagnosed for? And what other things were you numbing out with or self-medicating with?
Yeah. So I was taking Adderall during the day. People are very familiar with that. In college, people took it and to study and stuff. I'd taken it a few times in college. And when I was running out out of steam and running out of energy, I remembered that medication. And I went to my doctor and I was like, this medication really used to help me focus back in the day. Do you think I could get my own prescription? And they asked me a couple questions and I knew how to answer them.
Yeah.
And I got it. Eventually I couldn't sleep because I was taking more and more of that prescription. And I got a prescription for Ambien. And so, I'm on an upper and a downer every single day. And I didn't need it. I was never diagnosed with ADHD. I think people that do have conditions, like, I'm not trying to say that all medicine is bad, but for me, I didn't need it. And I was taking more and more. And then as you continue to take more and more of certain medications, it just makes you feel, my body just felt awful all the time. I felt really unhealthy. I felt really like my body was like rotting from the inside out. It just felt like my skin was crawling all the time. But as with an addiction, even though it makes you feel worse, you can't stop taking it. And so then I would drink like a whole bottle of wine at night to try and like numb out the way that it made me feel. And, that's certainly not what my physicians had in mind, I'm sure, when they prescribed me this medication. And by the end of my addiction, I was taking like hundreds of milligrams of Adderall, which is way over what you should take. I weighed 90 pounds. I had to take at least 5 Ambien to sleep. And I was drinking on top of it. And nobody really knew because I was kind of isolated during that time. And I went to a doctor. I was like doctor shopping, to get enough of this medication. But I was also like such a perfectionist that needed to look good on the outside. I had to do something that had my name written on the prescription because I felt like it wasn't wrong to do that, even though I felt like something was off. And I went to a doctor here in Nashville. And I can still remember like so vividly him looking at me and saying, I don't know what you're doing, but if you keep doing what you're doing, your life, you will not live much longer. And I thought to myself, this is like how crippled of a perfectionist I was. I thought, well, I've lived a good life. I've done all these great things. And maybe this is, maybe I'm supposed to go out this way. That is how much I could not let people in on the fact that there was a problem.
Right.
And there was nothing I could do to stop taking that medication. My body became dependent on it, as we do to a lot of things that we use to numb out. And those were my biggest numbers, but I certainly had other things that I was using to numb out in my life too. Relationships, I never was not in a relationship, one after another after another. Like if I saw one was about to end, I was on the lookout for the next one. It was just, I had to have something to take my attention away from the pain. I would avoid the pain that I felt and the things that I needed to deal with underneath at all costs in my life. And I almost lost my life to it. And thank goodness I didn't. My parents live in Kentucky still. And I was around them one weekend. This is after it had been going on for about 5 years. And they just looked at me and they were just like, something is wrong. What is going on with you? We didn't have anyone in our family that had ever dealt with an addiction or was in recovery. So they really had to like get online and start Googling, like, what do you do from here? And they found a program. And, I basically agreed because I was so hopeless at that point in time. I didn't have any job prospects. Like my health was literally like withering away. Hopelessness like has a way of being, it's just, there is no lower that you can go. So a lot of times you make the next right decision just out of like pure desperation because you're just at the bottom. And I went to that program and, I honestly thought like when I got there, they would take my blood and be like, she doesn't do illegal drugs, like send her home. But they kept me there for 30 days because that did qualify me, what I was doing. And then they recommended 3.5 more months of an extended care program because as we all know, it's never the thing that manifests. It's never the substances or whatever it is that manifests on the outside. There was stuff underneath it. And it was my attachment to all these titles and all these things that I'd done and being seen as different. It was my attachment to my appearance and just like remaining this person that I was. Even that person almost killed me and I still wanted to be her in some lights. So I learned a lot while I was there and much more than just the sobriety piece. It was life-saving and life-changing for me. And it was one of the most amazing experiences. I wrote a lot about it for the first time.
Wow. Sounds like it was life-giving to you. And thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing that.
Yes,
I know a lot of people sample Adderall in college as a studying tool and supports them to stay up really late and cram. And we see it in a lot of young people in their 20s start to take it recreationally, to ask their doctor for it. You mentioned it, but we all know how to answer questions to get our hands on that if we need to.
Yeah.
But what I'm interested in, and thank you for sharing that, because it's a lot of people out there and probably some listening that feel like they may be on the path to where you were going. But I'm really more interested in what was underneath, and maybe how you were raised and who you were as a person before going to rehab, where you started to uncover what were these things you didn't want to feel? What were these things you didn't want to really come in contact with and think about? Your attachment to appearance, attachment to titles. Where do you think that stems from, and what have you learned along the way?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, because I always want to make it clear that although recovery is a part of my story, it's not a recovery book. It's not an addiction book that's in 2 chapters. It was a big thing that happened to me, and it was the catalyst to this whole living fully. But that is not something that I focus on. And in fact, it's the underneath. If people say, what were your biggest takeaways from treatment? I wouldn't even put sobriety in the top 2. It was the underneath. And I opened the whole book with this story that happened to me. I'd been there for about 7 weeks. And I had these long blonde permanent hair extensions. So you tape in, you melt in. I had all of them. They were always permanent. The ones that I have now, like I take up, but you can take them out every night. But I always had this permanent hair in my head. It was like part of my identity. I'd done Miss America with them. I'd done all these things. And I'd been there for about 6 weeks. And they said, we're going to let you go to the hair salon and get your hair fixed. And I was excited about that. I was like, great, And they knew what they were doing with me, because they knew I had an attachment to appearance. And I didn't know that, So I go to this hair salon. I'm so excited, thinking I'm going to feel better. And they start taking my hair out for the first time, 10 years. And when they took the last piece of hair out and turned my chair around to face the mirror, because they did it all kind of backwards, I had a full out of body, life flash before my eyes experience. It was so earth shattering for me to see myself without that hair, that it was one of the most pivotal, honestly, sounds silly to say about something like hair, but it was serious. It was one of the most pivotal moments of my life. And I went back and I was so devastated seeing myself like that. My hair was 2 inches long. It was broken off from the years of damage. And I went back and I was like, I can't believe what you're doing with me. I know that what you're doing with all these other people, but this is not how you do it. You've made me hate myself. You've made me feel like I wasn't even doing the street stuff. And now I want to do that. I was like, I feel like nobody right now. And I tried to leave treatment, and I packed my bags, and I was so mad. And I ended up staying after some conversations that I had. And obviously that struck such a nerve in me that started some major work. Because who would think that you would be so attached to something like that had been a part of you in a way that it's so deeply shattered your psyche? But until that, I was faced with that, I didn't know. And I wrote about that in the book, because whether you are to that extreme or on your way to that extreme, it is very important to know that if you have an attachment to something, who would think an attachment to hair, or later I had an attachment to these titles and being seen as different and anything but average, those really stood in my way of a full life. I always held those things up in front of me that became the person that I was. All of these things on the outside, I didn't even know who I was behind it. I had to find out who I was once they took it all away from me. And I'm standing there bare to the bone. But that began some major work for me. And that work certainly started from, I think, like I said in the beginning, I was the oldest and an example and a leader in my family. and I'd always done these great things, but it was never a bad thing. But that's the way that this journey goes. Sometimes it starts and it's a good thing, but a good thing can turn bad, and it can happen really slowly. And that's what happened to me. And luckily, I ended up in a treatment program where, in order to get me sober, they had to get to the bottom of these things that had gotten me there. And I mean, they got the shovel out with me, and they dug and dug and dug. And by the time I was done there after 5.5 months, it was the first time in my life that I felt 100% just okay as the person that I was, without any cheering section or hair extensions or titles. When I introduced myself, I didn't say, I did Miss America and I was Miss, and I did all these. I would just introduce myself as myself. I didn't need all of these like shiny objects like held up in front of me. And I wrote about it in the book because there are going to be most people reading this book are not going to have an addiction that's gone off the rails. But I didn't either for the first 24 years of my life. I was addicted to other things. I was addicted to remaining the person I was. I was addicted to the notoriety and the relationships and the appearance and all of the things that you wouldn't think could wreck your life. And they did mine. So I wrote about that in the book because I think as women, and especially as women, like entrepreneurs that are doing a lot in their life, sometimes you get so busy doing so many things that you don't even see when these things start to creep in. So I wrote a lot about that in Living Fully.
It's a really important topic, especially now with everyone on social media. We don't have to be Miss Kentucky or in the running for Miss America to have fame, to have people applauding, whether it be like someone's makeup routine or the outfits they just bought from Zara or like the meal they made or whatever. Our identities are being so entrenched in the response and the opinions of others that it can really make or break your day. And so thank you for writing the book and thank you for sharing this story, because it is, I'm the oldest of 3 girls, so I know what it feels like to have to be the example, to cut the path, to make your parents proud. These are things that I'm sure our parents didn't, they weren't trying. It's just the way it is as the oldest in the family order. Like, it is. You're the golden child or something, but they're like, this is their first time. And I can see myself repeating. Yeah. I can see myself repeating that a little bit with Sebastian. Like, he cares what Chris and I think, and he follows the rules. And Tosh is just like, see you later, Mom. I'm going to go bang my head into this wall.
Isn't that so funny how birth order, it's really a thing, and it's pretty universal. Like, my first is just the same. He will cry. Like, his lip is quivering if he feels like he's disappointed you, like he's kidding. The other one, you could turn him loose in the woods and he would survive for 3 weeks. He does not need us. He's just like a wild animal, like so different. Does not care if he gets in trouble, doesn't. But we try to intentionally like parent our first one, even though he's naturally like that. And naturally we are just like my parents and your parents. My parents didn't know that by praising my accomplishments, like they were planting a seed. Of course they didn't. You think that that's amazing to do. It is amazing to do. You've just got to balance it out. So we are trying as parents of a 2 and 3 year old, trying to do that, but I can relate.
So in going through everything that you've went through along this journey, when you pulled back the titles and you pulled back the appearance and you felt comfortable walking up to someone and saying, "Hi, I'm Mallory," not, "Hey, I'm Miss Kentucky, soon to be Miss America," or, like, just, who were you?
I was, for the first time in my life, for the very, very first time in my life, I was a person that was not scared of the negative emotions, was not scared to have the day that I was having, was not scared of adversity. I didn't fear pain. I avoided pain, hard conversations, vulnerabilities at all costs before I went into treatment. That was why when that doctor said that to me that day, I didn't call my parents and say, I need help. I said, okay, I'll die. I guess I'll just die then, because no one can know. So at the end of my time there, I was a person that knew not only could I make it through things that, I originally avoided and were hard for me, but like it would make me a new type of person because I saw who I was at the end of treatment. And I just felt so grounded. I felt like the qualities that I would bring to a friendship or a relationship were so much more than the titles or like the things that I had done. In the end of my time in treatment, I almost felt a little silly for holding on to those things because I was like, who I was as a person got me those things. And then I became obsessed with those things. And then that became who I was as a person, held it in front of me. You couldn't even see me. And I also became a person who loved the person that I was in whatever state that I was in, and was proud of the things that I had done, good and hard or bad. At the end of treatment, I was very proud that I had gone through that and that I had endured those times that I wanted to leave and that I'd done really hard work. I was proud of that, like I was the other things that I was proud of in my life. And it did. At the end, it felt a little silly that I had valued titles over who I was as a person, because I knew that who I was as a person was a great grounded, like, person that loved my family, that had all of these values and talents and gifts and things about me that had been buried under the weight of all of this stuff. And so at the end, that's how I felt. And I felt like I was just going back out into the world, ready for anything. I felt really strong.
I was going to say, you recognized your strength on the other side of that adversity, and you went back to your core, the values and the priorities and truly who you were. So what would your friends who've known you your whole life, or your siblings or your parents, removing the appearance and the titles, what would they say are some of your greatest gifts?
So you saying that just reminded me of something, because the last day that I was there in treatment, they'll like check off make sure that you've done all of your quote unquote assignments, make sure that you've done all these things that they want you to do while you're in this program. And they realized something that I hadn't done on the last day. So you're supposed to write a person that is like your ideal person in the middle of this poster board. And I wrote my grandpa. I dedicated the book to him. He's just this amazing man. I wrote all of these attributes about him around, and I presented this on the very last day. And I looked up after my presentation, and like all of my small group, my friends that had known me the whole time, they all had tears in their eyes, and they're like, "That's how we describe you." And I couldn't even like take it in. But looking back, I know that like that was the purest version of who I was, and that I did embody some of those qualities of humility and of groundedness, and funny, and this just light and this love for family, and like you're not afraid to face adversity. It's part of life. It makes you who you are. And like I still remember that, and I think that that's like always the ideal person that I'm trying to be. I think so many people in their lives, like you have a person that you feel like leaves such a mark on you anytime you're around them. And you probably embody a lot of those attributes, because I think a lot of times with people that we admire the most, they have mirrored qualities, or the ones sometimes we've buried, in ourselves. And so I think that that's what they would say when I'm at my best, that I embody some of those same qualities that are in him. And, that actually happened to me at the end of treatment and time. And it was the perfect way to leave. And it's like, whenever I feel like all mixed up in things, I mean, launching a book and a podcast, doing all the millions of things that we do, they're all great and they're all fun, but it's a lot of stuff involved, and I can just get busy and like on the hamster wheel again. And when I think about the person that I want to be, that's the person that I want to be, like underneath it all. And so I have to fight it every day, because it's not a crown and a banner saying here's who you are, but it's this. It's like, it's my it's Instagram, it's merchandise. There's so many other things that can take that place. But luckily, I've done a lot of work around that. So not to say I don't end up in those spirals again, but I recognize when they start and I can get out of them so that I can live fully, so I can live a bigger life, not one that's consumed by those things like mine used to be.
It's a beautiful circle, full circle at the end of treatment for you to have gotten in touch with who you wanted to be and to really have the time. I don't think a lot of us have the time. We get in the rat race and the hamster wheel. And I mean, to think that substance abuse, whether that like be prescription or street drugs or whatever for anyone, can make people hit rock bottom to a point where they go, wow, I need a beat. I need a minute to like reevaluate my life and look at what's going on. I always like to find the silver lining, but there's a major silver lining in that you were given the time and the space to work through removing the appearance, removing the titles, getting back in touch with who you were and what your priorities and goals are and how you wanted to live your life moving forward, to live fully, to make a family, fall in love, like have like real substantial relationships and be that like funny, light, present person that you are with your friends and family. Like that, there is a blessing in that. And there is that silver line because it's such a, transformational period in your life. For people that are in the rat race, not even realizing they're attached to their titles or their accomplishments and forgetting about the fact that these day-to-day little moments, like how you greet your husband when you have your cup of coffee, or the presence and the smile on your face when you pick up your kids at school, or whatever the case may be, what advice do you have for people to live fully? And how do we start to recognize when we're in this attachment life?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you asked that because I wrote the first part of the book. It shares that story of myself. But the second half of the book, I write to me now. I write to you. I write to the people in life that are just living, that have a job and a family, and they're just busy. It's just life, but want a bigger life. Because that's the person I am now. Everything isn't figured out, but I'm a person who constantly chooses a bigger life over and over. As my life goes back on a baseline, as like this noisy, busy life, I'm just keeping my head above water. I re-choose it. And what I'd say to the people that are living like I do today, even, I would say awareness is number one. And that's why in the end of the book, I wrote about so many different things, because what I needed to break through to live fully was different at different points in my life. Sometimes for me, it's fear. Fear drives the ship for me. I'm making decisions out of fear. It's a loop in my head. I can't sleep. Wrote a chapter about that. Sometimes it's that I'm not thinking of the legacy that I want to leave in the day to day. I'm putting that off till I'm 75. I talk about like living in legacy mode, like what are the things that I want my kids to remember me for? I've got this much time with them. What is the way that I like what you just said? Do I want to greet my husband in the morning? I write about overcoming extremely devastating moments. These are ones that I endured in sobriety. My sister lost a baby after 34 days and it was heart-wrenching 2 years ago. And I wrote about that story and how at the end of it, like I call that, it's called Love Prevails, because she's the most beautiful example of overcoming, not in a Pollyanna, this didn't happen, shove it under the rug kind of thing, but in a, I am going to choose to continue to live my life and seek every day as I feel this despair. I'm going to seek to find the joy and the happiness and the light. I'm going to still have faith, and I'm still going to like keep fighting for the light. I wrote about so many different things because the person today who's caught up in the rat race that wants to live a bigger life, like I said, it's going to look different. What they need to, somebody may not need balance in their life, but somebody might need to quiet the voice of fear. Somebody might know what their legacy is in the everyday, but when life throws them a curveball, they just want to get out of the pain. They don't make the next right decision. So awareness of what it is in your life that's holding you back from a full life is very important, I would first say to them. And then I would say, once you figure out the thing, because once whether you're reading Living Fully or whether you're in therapy and you figure out the thing that's holding you back, you do, you use the tool, you feel a little bit better, and then life will always go back to baseline. It's just the way that life is. And you don't fix a problem and it stays there. So what living fully is, and the way that I live fully now, is it's re-choosing that. It's the awareness every day to, oh, I remember the tool that I used, and like I've slipped back down. I'm back on cruise control, reminding myself, being really aware that I want to live a bigger life. I want to live a bigger life. This is it. This is the only life that I have. And realizing every day that if I can just be aware and if I can just take 5 minutes to think about my life, my priorities and my values, and are things right? Am I balanced? Am I feeling good about the way that I want to live in this one shot I have? I would say that to that person. Like, if you can continue to do that, like I say in the book, to live a life is a gift we're given. To be alive, think of how many, what are the odds that we end up here in this time, in this place, in this era, in this country? That's a gift. But to live a full life is a gift we give ourselves. And to take it even further, it's a gift you have to keep giving yourself over and over. And that's what living fully is. It's not a life that's full. I had a full life before. It was empty. It is a full life that is full of the things that you love, that is full of the things that bring you joy. And it's also a reminder in, this world, you and I both have large social media followings, but it's a reminder that you don't have to have those things. The things that I crave, even though I have a lot of these things that people think if I had that thing, I'd be happy all the time. I'm here to tell you that ain't the thing. Like, it is the ordinary everyday. You spend your life in the everyday, ordinary moments. It's finding joy in the everyday, in the life that the world doesn't tell you, like, this is where you find the joy and the happiness. And I would tell the people, in the everyday to remember that. Don't get too busy that you can't look at your life anymore and find the things that make you happy. Or don't get so bent out of shape with just making sure that everything around you is perfect and everybody's needs are met, that all your blessings, your kids and your husband, become burdens in your life. There are so many things that I would tell them, but I would just tell them, like, if you can just find in the moment what it is that's holding back your life from being a full life, and continue to be aware and re-choose to break through that thing again and again, then you will live fully.
It's beautiful. It is a journey. It is a practice. It's something that you need to reevaluate over and over again. And you said it, you go to baseline and then you go, oh, I need to recommit to this. And I think that's an important point to make, because I think people look at you online and beautiful family and everything that you have going on, and choosing to live this purposeful and full life. And they would say, oh, she's got it figured out. But to be vulnerable and to say that you need to continually recommit to this, to live that full life and to leave the legacy that you want to leave, and to ditch the fear and to move through trauma and find those bright moments. What are you doing on the daily to remind yourself, and to what rituals and habits help you stay connected to what's important?
It's different for me at different times. And this is a busy season in that we had a book just launch. But for me, especially as a person who I will run 100 miles an hour, like in my life naturally, that is my natural state, is
Same.
Go, run faster. So something that I always have to do, which is really hard as opportunities get bigger and life gets bigger, I have to have the moments where I'm not doing anything. And gosh, I used to hate when people were like, just be. And I was like, well, yeah, if you're lazy, but like, I got things I got to do. So I hate it when people said that, but I do understand it now, because if I've got my phone in my hand, in my bed until 11:30 at night until I fall asleep, because I'm still doing stuff on it, that is not me living a full life. Mm-hmm. And so for me, one of the boundaries, the rituals, whatever you want to call it, I have to do is making sure that I don't jam pack my life full, because I have enough opportunities and enough things going on that I could fill every second of every day.
Mm-hmm.
But that almost killed me before. And I have to continue to remind myself of that those things that I used to hate when people say, hey, like, you're not a human doing, you're a human being. And I was like, yeah, but you can't just be, you have to do. What are you going to do? Like, you got to live, but I understand that. And I have to slow down when my life moves fast. So that is something that I do. And I also reassess like my values. I think that you have to balance out your values with how you spend your time. So this is something I learned as a young child. I had this family that was really obsessed with like legacy and teaching us our family story and like how to live our lives and all these lessons. And we used to meet like 4 times a year, even though we lived on the same farm. We'd have these like family reunions. We did not need to be reunited. We like basically lived in the same house. I feel like my cousins were always over, Yeah. It was very intentional. And my family was very intentional about teaching us, this is the way that you live your life and put your values first. That's how you spend your money. That's how you raise your kids. That's how it was really important. And I would always be like, what? Now later in my life, I understand. And if I say, here are my values. Number 1, family. Number 2, faith. Number 3, health. Number 4, work. If I say that, okay, look at my life. What are my hours in the day spent? Number 1, work. Number 2, work. Number 3, work. Number 4, family. Number 5, faith. Number 150, health, until I have some knockdown, drag out problem that the doctor says like, so, you got a problem that you need to fix. That's when I deal with health, That is not values aligning with the way I'm living my life. And living fully is making sure that those 2 things are congruent. I did a lot of work in the beginning of the book with making the outside match the inside, making myself congruent. And now in my life, I feel congruent. Who I am feels congruent. But sometimes I have to reassess. Are my values and the way that I'm spending my time congruent? And do they mesh? And do they match? And that's hard to do because we in America, we want more and we want to work and we want bigger and better and brighter. But then we say, well, we value Jesus and our children. But if I am working 12 hours a day and then I'm too tired to give anything to my kids at the end of the day, then that stops short at the words that I'm saying out of my mouth. So I try to make sure that those things match. That's something that I do every day in the day-to-day on the other side of things in my own life to live fully.
Well, it is interesting that you grew up in a family that valued legacy so much. What kind of legacy are you looking to leave with your children?
I want to be a present parent, which is hard with all of the distractions in the world today. I don't think our parents had those distractions. They had landline phones. You can't take them in your car. You can't be surfing the internet like while you're driving, which you should never do, but people do it. I try to be a present parent. I also try to, especially, you and I just talked about being the oldest and raising these oldest kids, and you can just see it coming out. I try to make sure that my kids see me model that we can deal with hard things and that they know if they make mistakes, if things are not perfect, if they're still figuring things out, that's okay. And that we love them just the same. And I hear my husband doing that all the time with him. He's very good at that. And Ford will mess something up and he'll start to cry and Kyle will be like, it's good. It's good when you mess up and make a mistake. And I'm like, he's trying to tell, yeah, come on, we'll get there. That is something that's important to me. And also it's certainly important. I'm the breadwinner for my family. My husband had a big business that he left behind when my business started to take off, and he takes care of our kids a lot. He helps me within my business. It's important for me to show them, I have 2 boys, what it looks like, to work hard. But I want them to know, even though I had a big job and a big career and all these things that were going on, that I chose that they were first, that I chose them first. And it's hard to do both things. So I try to do that. And I feel like, I couldn't have messed up too bad because they're only 2 and 3. But sometimes like I get off track and I'm like, I got to get together. They're starting to notice, So
Wow.
that's what I try to do.
I feel like you're preaching to the choir. I have
Yeah.
the same. I'm the breadwinner and the only income over here. And Chris takes care of our kids and supports me to do what I need to do. But it is an interesting life transition when it's not what you had planned for growing up. And when you pictured, I don't know how you pictured your life, but even to the point of starting Be Well by Kelly and wanting to start my nutrition career, I was like, this is a great mom job. I can see people on the side and I can help when my kids are at school and I can be the room mom. And because my mom was so involved in my life and was able to be there for me, it is, there are periods of resentment where I'm like, babe, like if you just only and he knows it's something that I'm working through and that I love him more than life, but it requires me to ask for help sometimes. Like, let's start scheduling. Like, it's crazy, but on Thursdays, it's like my least busy day. And it's now a day where I adventure with my boys and Chris. Like we adventure Chris calls it Saturday on a Thursday because we're able to go to the kids museum, or we're able to go to places that wouldn't be impacted on a weekend together as a family. And it just feels different because it should be a work day for me. But as an entrepreneur, we can fill every hour of our day if given the opportunity with work, especially if you are someone who's running, right? And that intentionality has changed that for me. And that came down to Chris and I having a conversation, early in the beginning of this year, that Bash is off at school. I can't believe Tashin's already a year old. And it's like, they're 3 and 1 and we want another one. And I'm just going to have less and less time and feel more and more like a failure and not connected to living fully in what you're saying and being so intentional. It does take scheduling that time sometimes, or even figuring out what works for you. I used to love the morning before work and playing Duplos or Brio and having coffee. And when that morning goes too long, if it goes till 8, my kids get up at 5:15, I'm antsy. And for 45 minutes before 8, I'm already thinking about work. So I might as well just give that present hour and a half. And then if I'm not there, not be there, and then be there again later.
Yeah. And it's very hard. That's our baseline. That is where we constantly another thing that's hard for me, I have to leave things on the table. I have to realize if I want to choose my family, I can't do a podcast season right now, or I can't. And it's really hard when you have all of these other people on the outside that you're really affecting and impacting their life. You are helping them live better lives. But if I'm not doing it in my own home, then it falls short. And I have to leave things on the table. And my husband is a really great reminder of that, because he's like, we're fine. You don't need that brand deal. We don't need that right now. You can stop. You can slow down. He's very good at that. And I appreciate that he is very good at that, because it's really hard for me to leave things on the table. And I'm like you too, in that I'm like, okay, here's my time. But then when we're at the end of the time, I'm thinking, oh no, what's piling up right now? What do I have to respond to? How many? And it's a constant battle to free myself of that way of thinking and that way of life. But it is I have to, I will always be striving to.
Right. Yeah, I think it's really important to look at the return on your time too, just in whether it's your brand deals or, for me, diversifying into different types of business, whether that be courses or protein powder, or what I didn't realize when creating something out of passion, that it would actually allow me to spend more time in my passion as a parent with my children versus working for other people or having just an hourly interaction with a client. As much as I love it, we all get burnt out. You just make a really good point, and it's resonating super deeply with me because
I didn't realize we had so much in common. We have a lot in. It is we have the same amount of kids that are the same age. I didn't realize that your husband watched the kids, and that you were the only one that was really doing this either. That's, and you have a career where you're passionate about what you do. I can tell every day when I watch you.
Yeah,
I know you love what you do.
Heck yeah.
I do too. So it is hard to choose something that I love over something that I love to do. Because, sometimes kids don't give you back that immediate gratification that somebody might on the internet that's like, whoa, you changed my life with what you just said. And that makes me feel really good. But when my kids are screaming, crying, and I'm like, I just gave you an hour and a half of my time and I didn't do 5 things. Like, they don't always give me back the thank you. It's delayed. It is delayed gratification, but it is something that I'm not willing to miss out on. And that's why I constantly strive to get it right. But I'll always be striving to get it right, I think.
Yeah, so. It's baked into the to who you are. So yeah, I mean it's so true. I can even just putting Bash to bed last night and like rubbing his back and went to shut the door and he's like, "Hey mom," and I was like, "Yeah," and he's like, "I love you." And I was just like, he's just getting to that age where, just that they're so amazing. It's such the best teachers of being a human being instead of a human doing.
It is truly the best. And it's so fast. It goes so fast. Sometimes I feel like that's why I want to keep having more kids. Cause I'm like, oh my gosh, that went so fast. I got to give me one more chance. Give me one more chance to get it right.
That's so cute.
It is certainly what a gift to be able to have those reminders living in your house with you if you're only like paying attention. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, Mallory, thank you so much for your time. I know you've taken time away from your business and your children to be here to talk about this amazing book that you put out and your podcast. And people can follow along. I know you've had also a major health transformation. And
I have a podcast all about that, about what happened. I know that your listeners are very interested in that. So that may be something that they're interested in, because I, like a lot of people, I'm living 100 miles an hour. And then all of a sudden you have a health crisis that happens that forced me to have to see. I was seeing 6 different doctors. I was having these my body was just like going crazy. I'd had 2 easy pregnancies besides the gestational diabetes, and I had 4 miscarriages in 1 year. I was having constant nosebleeds to the point that they were sending me to the ER. I lost a liter of blood, just these bizarre things. But I got tested and diagnosed with prediabetes and a blood clotting disorder, which is an autoimmune disorder that I have called antiphospholipid syndrome, and just a host of other things. And I'd always been a person that took health for granted because I was young and healthy and things were going fine. I just didn't look at it, You can't just look at the inside of your body. You just got to wait till it manifests into the outside world until you deal with it. And it was a full-blown transformation that happened in May. And then I got pregnant in October, and I've been able to healthily carry this pregnancy when I wasn't able to for an entire year. I lost 4. Wow. And if that's not a testament to, and it was diet that changed. But I lost 25 pounds in the process. I brought my fasting blood sugar numbers were like 120 every morning. I brought them down to the 180s. And then everything changed. The clarity of my mind, the way that my body functioned, and even autoimmune disorders, they go up and down, and it went almost dormant. I had 3 of these blood clotting variants that I tested for, and I went back and tested again. And he always said, I would always have all 3 of them. And he said, we're only showing 1. And if that's not a testament to health and wellness, and I'm a normal person. I'm not a Kelly. I'm not someone that is passionate about this and loves it and studied it. I am a normal eating person that I would eat fast food. I eat Chick-fil-A. I like cookie dough blizzard from Dairy Queen. I'll eat the macaroni and cheese I just cooked for my kids, And you don't realize sometimes that you can change your whole life by changing your diet. I never had to do it before. I trained for Miss America, and I knew how to lose weight. Trained for Amazing Race. I knew how to get in major physical shape. I knew how to travel the world with little food. But I didn't know how to do it from the inside out and save my life and make my body okay to carry another child. And get my blood sugar right so I didn't become a full-blown diabetic. And I was forced into this journey, and it was like the most amazing journey. I could be mentally strong enough to stop, drug addiction and all these other things, but man, food was hard.
Yeah,
Food was hard.
that's a relationship you can't kick, right? You cannot. And I think that makes it one of the hardest because
Yeah.
you talk about drugs, you talk about alcohol, you talk about sex, you talk about porn, you talk about all these addictions that people have that they can abstain from. Food is not one of them. You have to have a relationship with food, and you have to constantly work on your relationship with food. And based on the outside inputs, whether that be stress or family parties that serve up the bugles and the Philly cream cheese or whatever it is, like that is a relationship that you constantly have to work on. And I love that you say that I'm a normal person when it comes to food and that you're not a Kelly. It's funny, but like I grew up on Taco Bell. I grew up on all the Costco frozen foods. Like,
okay, you're normal then.
I did become obsessed with health and nutrition when I was on my own and in college. And that looked like, thin chicken breasts on a George Foreman grill in my college apartment. But, it evolves every year that new science and research comes out, but we can always go back to blood sugar balance and nutrient dense foods and supporting our bodies so that we aren't attacking our own self via autoimmune diseases and things like that. So you are a testament to people listening that it is something that can be done. And it doesn't mean you're never going to have Chick-fil-A ever again, but it can't be the norm.
Couldn't have it every day. Yeah. And like, I can't have the biscuits in the morning, like maybe like once in a blue moon, but like, no, I had to shift things. And I love what you just said that, cause that's when they used to say at treatment, cause they dealt with people with different addictions, and there were people there with food addictions, real food addictions. And they said, food is the only addiction that you can't come here and say, here's my monster, put it in the closet. How do I keep it in the closet? A food addiction is an addiction where you have to go 3 times a day and you have to take that monster by the hand. You have to lead it, and it has to sit beside you at the table, and you have to live with it. You have to keep bringing it because you always have to eat. So I think it's why it's one of the hardest things for people to kick. And I think that people don't realize, but I had a real addiction. And I saw the way that how hard it was and the way that I felt when I was breaking free of sugar and other things. It felt just like withdrawal from drugs and alcohol. And it just goes to show how mentally addicted we can be to food. Absolutely. But then once you're on the other side of it, when you get to the underneath piece of things and can really kick it, how, oh my gosh, like you come alive again. It was just like that in treatment. I came alive again. I felt myself again. The haze lifted. It was the same thing with food, which is so fascinating because I think people, they might come to you and they say, well, I want to look like this, or I want to lose weight. It's always, I want to lose weight, I feel like. Mm-hmm. And when they do it the right way and they feel all the other things and the weight's falling off too, but they're like, wow, I didn't realize this brain fog that I was dealing with all the time that's gone now. It's pretty amazing.
It's wonderful. And I love the science of it. Like I love, you're mentioning you're not having the biscuits. Like I love breaking down the science of like glutamorphines. It's like morphine in the brain, like these byproducts of gluten metabolism. They do things to your brain, whether it be like a release of dopamine and a hit of like happy or actually like a numbing out feeling. Like we get those feelings and then that blood sugar roller coaster crashes you down. You're tired, your cravings, all the rest. And getting balanced and pulling that stuff out does exactly what you say. But that can be a source of numbing too, right? Because we are clearing it out. Yes. Then you get back in touch with those emotions again. You feel alive in so many ways, but you feel feelings so much deeper.
Then you want to eat the biscuit again.
Yeah.
So if you're not in the center where they don't have the biscuits available, you have to be strong. And it's hard. Luckily I had my Amy Migdalia that I was telling you before that like loves your protein. My dear friend who is so knowledgeable and amazing. And she was my constant companion. So I had someone to hold me accountable. Mm-hmm. And she helped me know which foods and which oils I couldn't eat and which foods I couldn't eat. And I would be like, that is so dumb. It's an oil. Yeah. She'd be like, no. it is inflammatory. And here's why. And, at the beginning, I fought her for like 6 weeks. And I was so mad. I was mad. Why do I have to deal with this? Just like a lot of people are with a drug addiction. Everybody else is eating this. Why am I the one that like things are going to come crashing down and like I've got to deal with this? Then you get over the hump and you start to feel the transformation and it all changes. And then she became just like a companion on my journey. First, I fought her every day. I was mad. I wanted the chocolate and the biscuits and the cookie dough blizzard. And I was just really mad that I couldn't have it. And then I got to the other side. And if you can just get to the other side, whether it's drugs or whether it's food, and just feel what it feels like on the other side, it makes you wonder, like, why did I even start doing this in the first place? So I just hope that everybody can get to the other side and feel that feeling, because that is fuel. That is fuel for you continuing on. Because you can hear Kelly say or me say, like, health feels really good, or like being free of drugs and alcohol feels really good. But you have to feel it for yourself. You do. Especially get through the hard times, I think.
Definitely.
So, yeah.
Well, your book's helping people do that. Your new book, Living Fully, your podcast, Living Fully. I definitely recommend people go check it out. The chapters that address fear and address legacy and address getting through traumas, like that's the stuff people are hiding from when they're self-medicating with or relying on appearance and titles. And we all need a dose and a reminder of how to live fully, be present, and focus on what our priorities are. So we do leave the legacy that we're meant to leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mallory,
well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Where can people follow along? Where can they get the book? I'd love to tag Amy in the show notes too, if people are in local Nashville. Let's.
You're so sweet. Her husband's in the NFL, so they're in a different city like every season, I feel like. So she's not even based in Nashville. She really travels. She does a lot of stuff online. She's a great follow if you're interested in things like that you do. But yeah, my website is MalloryErvin.com, and you can find everything there. Where you can buy the book anywhere books are sold: Amazon, Target, Barnes and Noble, Walmart, everywhere. It's everywhere. And but you can find my podcast, my YouTube channel, my book, everything on MalloryErvin.com or Instagram. We do a lot. So just Mallory Ervin, MalloryErvin. Following you. I've loved following you for a long time.
Oh, well, We're going to put all these links in the show notes so people can follow along, snag the book, tune into the podcast, and learn how to live their most full life.
Thank you so much.
This was really fun.
For sharing your platform with me. I really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, it's my absolute pleasure. It's just really, I think I learned the most from these interviews, and it's one of my favorite parts of my job. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Be Well by Kelly. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Learn more at BeWellByKelly.com and follow me on Instagram at BeWellByKelly. I would love if you picked up my books, Body Love and Body Love Every Day. They're sold on Amazon and at all major booksellers.